Imagine walking into a room where everyone used to talk over you. They didn't take your words seriously. They barely noticed you were there. Now, imagine 30 days from today. That same room goes silent when you enter. Heads turn. People pay attention before you even speak. Not because you became louder, but because you became undeniable. That's what Machiavelli meant by power. Not noise, not titles, but presence. And today, we're going to build that step by step from nothing. The first thing you must understand is that leadership isn't given, it's recognized. And people don't recognize you as a leader because you say so. They recognize you when they can feel that you no longer need their recognition. That's the paradox. To be followed, you must stop chasing followers. So our first week is not about learning to lead others. It's about mastering the only person who truly matters at the start, yourself. Let's start with day one. The first law of transformation is withdrawal. You stop feeding people's expectations of who you are. Every group has a hierarchy of energy. Some people speak to prove something. Others speak to guide. And then there are the silent ones. They watch. They calculate. And when they speak, it matters. Your goal, starting today, is to move from the first to the third category. That means you stop reacting instantly. When someone says something irritating, you let it hang. When someone looks at you for validation, you pause. Every pause rewires how they see you. Because silence in power dynamics isn't emptiness, it's control. The one who can delay response always wins. Machiavelli said that a ruler's greatest weapon is not his army, but his restraint. So your first practical step, observe yourself, not in a vague spiritual sense. Literally, take one day and count how many times you seek validation. You'll be shocked. Maybe you check your phone after posting something. Maybe you rephrase sentences to sound more agreeable. Maybe you laugh when something isn't funny just to blend in. Every time you do that, you hand over a piece of your authority. People subconsciously recognize it. They can smell the need to please. By removing this need, you start creating what I call psychological gravity. Gravity pulls things in without moving itself. It's invisible, but everything reacts to it. Your silence, your pace, your minimal expressions all begin to carry meaning. Day 2 to 4, your task is simple. Study the ecosystem. Every environment has an invisible order. Who speaks most? Who gets interrupted? Who holds attention longest? Don't judge, don't participate too much. Just observe. The goal is to see what others can't, the subtle cues that determine power. For example, who people glance at before they speak. That's the person they unconsciously see as the authority. Notice tone shifts, micropauses, how people react to humor or silence. Machiavelli would have called this the phase of learning the terrain. You cannot lead a territory you haven't mapped. Too many people try to assert leadership without understanding the power map around them. You must know where everyone's psychological weak spots are before you try to move them. During this week, you also begin training stillness. This is not a metaphor, it's physical. Stillness is what makes presence visible. It's how generals stand in war rooms while soldiers panic. Your body becomes your first signal of command. Try this 3-step habit every day. 1. Before you answer anyone, pause for 2 seconds. 2. Reduce all unnecessary movement. Hands, fidgeting, posture shifts. 3. Lower your speaking speed by 20%, not to sound slow, but to sound deliberate. This simple exercise alone can transform perception. People will assume you know something they don't. They will start deferring subtly, leaning forward when you speak. Why? Because the human brain associates calm control with dominance. The louder and faster someone talks, the less stable they appear. The quieter and steadier someone is, the more authority they project. By day 5, you'll feel discomfort. You'll start noticing silence stretching too long. You'll want to fill it. Don't. That discomfort is your old identity dying. Most people can't sit in silence because it exposes how little control they have over themselves. Machiavelli believed that the man who masters appearances masters men. This is where it begins. You master the appearance of control long before you feel it inside. Eventually, the inside catches up. Around day 6 or 7, start cutting noise sources. Every notification, every pointless conversation, every argument online. These aren't harmless. They fragment your focus. And fragmented focus means fragmented energy. You cannot radiate authority while drowning in distraction. Delete or mute apps that keep pulling you into smallness. Avoid gossip. Don't comment on everything. And, most importantly, stop explaining yourself. Explanation is the language of those seeking mercy, not power. When you act, let your actions speak. When you're questioned unnecessarily, smile and move on. Now, here's something few people tell you. Leadership starts with emotional detachment, not inspiration. People can't look up to someone who is constantly emotionally reactive. The moment they can predict your reactions, they stop respecting you. So, this week, you'll begin building a new kind of immunity. When something offends you, visualize yourself as an observer watching the scene from above. Ask, is this worth a reaction? Or is this just bait? Most power games are bait. Someone says something to test your emotional temperature. If you bite, they know they can pull you down anytime. If you don't, they realize you're untouchable.
That's what Machiavelli meant when he wrote, "Men are more ready to offend one who desires love than one who inspires fear." In modern terms, people cross those who are emotionally transparent, but think twice before crossing those whose emotions they can't read. Your unpredictability becomes your protection. By the end of week 1, something subtle but powerful happens. You begin to carry yourself differently. You listen more, talk less. You stop seeking comfort through social noise. People begin asking, "Are you okay? You seem different." That's your sign. They're feeling the shift. You've stopped operating from need. And that's when others start to need your attention. But don't rush to claim authority yet. That would break the illusion you're building. Leadership is not declared, it's inferred. Your next phase is to learn how to position yourself so that people begin to follow naturally without you ever asking. That's when influence starts to bloom from the shadows and others start to look up before you even speak the word. Now that you've mastered silence and detachment, the next phase begins: psychological positioning. This is where people start to see you differently. You're no longer that person trying to fit in or gain approval. You're becoming the one they subconsciously organize themselves around. And this shift doesn't happen because you told them to. It happens because you've stopped orbiting them, and now they begin to orbit you. In week 2, your objective is not to act like a leader. It's to become the reference point. Everything you do from here should subtly communicate one thing. You move with purpose, and others can either align with that or fall behind. Start with visibility control. Most people confuse leadership with visibility. They think being everywhere makes them relevant. It's the opposite. Constant visibility creates familiarity, and familiarity breeds casualness. You want to create selective presence. Show up less, but each time you do, it must feel intentional. Every word, gesture, or even silence should look like it has weight behind it. Machiavelli once observed that a prince who shows himself too often becomes contemptible. What he meant was that people must have time to miss your presence for it to gain value. So this week, intentionally pull back from overexposure. Stop posting every thought online. Stop attending every social exchange. When people notice you less frequently, they begin to project significance onto you. But visibility is just the first layer. The next step is social contrast. This is one of the most underrated psychological tools of influence. You create contrast not by boasting, but by behaving differently than everyone else in the same environment. When everyone reacts quickly, you pause. When everyone tries to prove a point, you ask a question instead. When others gossip, you remain neutral, slightly amused, but uninterested. That difference burns an impression into people's memory because in a world addicted to noise, composure feels like dominance. By day 10, start practicing what I call the Machiavellian response gap. Whenever someone says something that normally triggers a quick reaction, a joke, an insult, even praise, add a deliberate pause before responding. A 2-second gap that signals control. It's long enough to unsettle people, but short enough to stay natural. During that pause, you decide if replying even benefits you. The moment you stop being reactive, your power begins to multiply. Now it's time to build calibrated assertion. Being quiet doesn't mean being submissive. You have to show small flashes of strength, just enough for people to feel your boundaries. Once this week, choose one moment to say no, clearly, calmly, and without apology. Don't explain it. Don't soften it. Just state it. This single act rewires how others see you. It teaches them that your approval isn't cheap. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must occasionally show severity to keep respect alive. In modern life, that severity is expressed through firmness. If someone asks you for a favor that compromises your time or values, decline it. If someone interrupts you mid-sentence, stop speaking and look at them. These small moves are micro-assertions that signal authority. People subconsciously remember them. By mid-week, you'll notice something fascinating. When you speak, people start listening more carefully, not because you've become more interesting, but because you speak less often. Scarcity builds anticipation. Use this to your advantage. Begin planting subtle authority cues. A few examples. When you walk into a space, don't rush. Move as though time bends around you. When speaking, hold eye contact just a bit longer than usual, but break it first. That signals control. Keep your voice calm but decisive. Avoid rising tones at the end of sentences. Rising tones subconsciously signal uncertainty. Lower steady tones project certainty. Even the way you turn your head matters. Slow movements convey composure, sudden ones convey insecurity. By now, people are starting to place you differently in their mental hierarchy. You've gone from being one of them to someone they can't easily read or predict. That's psychological distance, and Machiavelli would call it useful ambiguity. He warned rulers never to be too transparent. When people can't fully understand your motives, they begin to respect them. Ambiguity creates mystique.
But be careful. This doesn't mean acting mysterious in a forced way. It means withholding just enough personal information that people feel curiosity, not confusion. When someone asks personal questions, answer in a way that gives insight without full access. Instead of, "I've been struggling," say, "I've been reevaluating a few things." You reveal intention, but not vulnerability. That balance keeps people intrigued. As this week continues, you'll start noticing power shifting in conversations. The louder ones will start explaining themselves to you. The talkative ones will look for your approval after jokes. You won't have to ask for respect. Your composure demands it silently. This is what Machiavelli described as the art of command without force. You no longer fight for dominance, you absorb it. Now comes the next layer, the use of timing. Real leaders know when to act and when to wait. The average person reacts instantly to emotion. A leader senses emotion, then acts strategically. This week, practice timing in small interactions. If someone gives you an opportunity or idea, don't accept or reject it immediately. Say, "Let me think on that." That phrase is a power move, disguised as thoughtfulness. It signals that your time and judgment are valuable. You're also going to learn something deeper, how to project certainty even when uncertain. Because leadership is not about always knowing, it's about never panicking. When faced with something unexpected, imagine yourself as a mountain. Others may shake, but you stand still, assessing. Even if you're unsure inside, your outer calm tells people everything is under control. And people follow the person who looks like they know what to do next, even if they're figuring it out in real time. By the end of week 2, you should feel a clear shift. You'll notice that people now wait for your input before making decisions. You'll overhear your name being mentioned when you're not around. They're starting to see you not as competition, but as a standard. That's the invisible threshold between being one of the crowd and being the person others look up to. But here's the catch. This is not the finish line. If you stay here too long, you'll stagnate. Week 3 is where we take this new authority and make it functional. You'll start leading conversations, shaping outcomes, and influencing direction without ever looking like you're trying. This is where psychological presence turns into real-world power. And once you learn to control that rhythm, people won't just respect you, they'll begin to rely on you. Now you've earned presence, but presence without motion is just theater. Leadership becomes real when your energy starts shaping outcomes, when people begin aligning themselves with your pace without realizing why. Week 3 is about that. Tactical engagement. You'll move from silent control to subtle orchestration, the point where your every action starts rippling outward. The first tactic is the power of scarcity in speech. The less you speak, the more people think your words matter. But the secret isn't in saying less, it's in ending things before they lose their value. Conversations, statements, even arguments leave while your words still echo. Machiavelli warned that familiarity erodes awe. The same rule applies to language. When you sense your point has landed, stop talking. Let silence carry it further. Here's something to try this week. In any discussion, finish your contribution first. Don't try to have the last word. Aim for the final impact. If others continue, just listen. The silence that follows your words becomes your shadow. It keeps walking even after you've stopped. People will notice that pattern and unconsciously start editing themselves around you. The second tactic is mirroring and leading. At this stage, you've already established calm authority, but influence isn't static. It moves through imitation. The trick is to subtly adopt the rhythm and tone of those above you in status or influence. Then, gradually slow your pace, lower your tone, and force them to match you. That's how you switch who's leading without saying a word. It's how generals take control of a room full of politicians, not by speaking louder, but by controlling the tempo. You'll see this in small things. In meetings, if the loudest person talks fast, respond slower. If someone dominates with intensity, answer with composure. The human nervous system subconsciously follows steadier energy. Within minutes, the person who seemed dominant starts mirroring your calmness, and that's when control flips. Now, leadership also demands a deeper art, indirect dominance. This is the ability to guide others without ever making them feel guided. When you openly tell people what to do, they resist. But when you let them think it was their idea, they obey willingly. Machiavelli called it governing the governed mind. Here's how it works in real life. Say you want a team member to support your plan. Instead of presenting it outright, frame it like curiosity. I've been thinking, do you think it would work better if we approached it this way? You seed the thought, pause, and let them chew on it. A few hours later, they might say, I think we should try that idea. And you nod. The influence is complete. Leadership without confrontation. But here's the thing most people forget. This tactic only works when your emotional energy is detached from the outcome. If you seem invested in being right, people sense the manipulation. The art is to plant the idea like a breeze, not like a command. As you practice these methods, people will start seeking your approval naturally. They'll test ideas on you, watch your expressions, adjust based on your reactions. This is where Machiavellian power becomes almost invisible. You lead not by force, but by frame control. The frame is the invisible context of every conversation: who defines the meaning, who sets the pace, who decides what matters. And 90% of people surrender that frame unconsciously.
You will not keep the frame. Apply the rule of 3 filters. Before you respond to anything, a question, a demand, a challenge, ask yourself 3 silent questions. 1. Does this require a reaction, or is it bait? 2. Does my response strengthen my position or equalize it? 3. Does silence speak louder here? If any of those answers lean toward restraint, you stay quiet. Remember, the one who controls emotional tempo controls perception. By midweek, you'll begin testing the Machiavellian triad: anticipation, ambiguity, and timing. These 3 create psychological gravity that makes people feel you're always 2 steps ahead. Anticipation means reading the field. Before any social interaction, predict how people will behave. What's their agenda? What emotional tone will they bring? Then prepare subtle counterweights. If someone tends to dominate through energy, lower yours. If someone tries to guilt you, look calmly amused. The more you anticipate, the less you react. And nothing frightens manipulators more than someone who can't be baited. Ambiguity is about keeping your intentions blurred. You don't need to answer every why or how. When people ask about your plans, say, "I'm considering a few things," or "We'll see." It sounds casual, but it builds curiosity. Ambiguity forces people to watch your actions, and when actions reveal more than words, authority forms naturally. Timing is the soul of influence. Most people act when emotion peaks. Machiavellian timing means waiting until others exhaust their intensity, then making your move when they're emotionally neutral, when they can't resist or retaliate. You don't fight for the spotlight. You step into it when others have burned themselves out. This week, test your timing with small experiments. In meetings or arguments, don't rush to respond first. Let 2 or 3 others speak, then calmly summarize the entire discussion with clarity. It will sound like leadership, but it's really strategic patience. Now, as you master these, one danger appears: arrogance. Power feels intoxicating, and Machiavelli himself warned that leaders lose control not when they are challenged, but when they start believing they can't be challenged. The key is balance: internal humility, external authority. You serve your purpose, not your ego. As this week ends, you'll notice the dynamic shifting entirely. People begin checking your reactions before finalizing decisions. They start saying things like, "What do you think?" or "Let's wait for your input." That's the point of convergence. Your presence now directs the room's emotional compass. And it's subtle. You didn't demand it, you became it. But we're not done, because true leadership isn't just about commanding respect, it's about sustaining it even when you're not around. In week 4, you'll learn how to make your presence permanent, how to create a reputation so strong that people defend your name even in your absence. This is where you ascend from influence to symbol. That's when you stop managing perception and start shaping legacy. Now, we enter the final stage, the transformation from a respected figure to a symbol of authority. Week 4 is about anchoring everything you've built into something unshakable. You're no longer just changing how people see you, you're defining who you are in their eyes. When you reach this stage, people don't just listen to you, they emulate you. They measure their behavior by yours. That's when leadership becomes identity. The first step is to create your personal code. This is what Machiavelli called the illusion of constancy. People don't follow those who are perfect. They follow those who are predictable in their strength. You need a consistent tone, style, and standard that becomes synonymous with your name. Maybe you're known for never losing composure, for always keeping your word, or for solving problems without complaint. Pick 2 or 3 traits and build every decision around them. When you act consistently, people start defining you by those traits, and when they can describe you easily, they can trust you deeply. For example, if your code is clarity, composure, and discipline, then every action you take must mirror those values. You speak clearly, even under pressure. You move deliberately. You follow through when others flinch. It sounds simple, but most people betray their own image every day without realizing it. They act on impulse, not design. You won't, because your code becomes your invisible armor. Once your code is established, the next step is public demonstration. Machiavelli said that men are won more by the appearance of virtue than by virtue itself. That doesn't mean being fake. It means displaying the qualities you want people to associate with you at the right time. Every leader has a defining moment where others silently decide this person is different. You don't get to choose when that moment arrives, but you can prepare for it. So during this week, when a situation arises that would normally rattle others, a small conflict, a sudden problem, an insult, that's your stage.
Remain completely calm. Don't rush. Don't explain. Don't match their energy. While everyone else spirals, you hold your ground. That moment will spread faster than any speech. People remember composure under chaos more than any words of wisdom. That's when they start to see you as leadership material, even if you never asked for it. The next principle is the shift from proving yourself to setting standards. Up until now, your focus was on establishing credibility, but real leaders don't chase credibility, they define it. You'll notice that by now, people may come to you for approval or guidance. That's your cue to stop trying to please and start setting the tone. If a group acts without discipline, you bring structure. If they talk without direction, you bring focus. You no longer mirror the environment, you shape it. The difference between a follower and a leader is subtle. A follower asks, "What do people think of me?" while a leader asks, "What tone do I want this space to have?" Your internal dialogue must shift accordingly. Every room you enter should subtly adjust to your presence, slower, calmer, more precise. To reinforce this, practice the law of minimum energy. Speak with less effort. Move with purpose. Avoid excess. Watch any great leader and you'll see it. No wasted words, no unnecessary emotion. The less energy you leak, the more control you project. People instinctively feel drawn to those who conserve energy because it signals certainty. Now we come to the final refinement, mystery. Not artificial mystery, not dramatics. Real mystery is restraint. It's what you don't show. In modern life, everyone overshares emotions, opinions, insecurities. They mistake openness for authenticity. But Machiavelli knew the truth. People respect what they can't fully read. So, from this day forward, you reveal selectively. You can be warm, even kind, but never transparent. The world doesn't need to know your every motive or struggle. That opacity creates emotional gravity. It makes people second-guess their assumptions about you. And in that uncertainty, they place you above them, because humans instinctively elevate what they can't fully understand. Combine that mystery with consistency, and you'll notice something powerful. People start defending you even when you're not there. They say things like, "No, he wouldn't do that," or "She's not like that." That's when your presence becomes symbolic. You no longer need to explain yourself, others do it for you. But remember, power without integrity decays fast. The final rule of Machiavellian leadership is control without cruelty. You've learned to shape perception, command respect, and lead silently. Now you must ensure that power serves something larger than your ego.
because the moment you use it for vanity, it begins to erode. Real leaders don't dominate for pleasure, they influence for purpose. So, as you finish these 30 days, look back at who you were when you started, reactive, seeking validation, overexposed, and then look at who you are now, composed, deliberate, quietly respected. People don't look up to you because you demanded it. They do it because somewhere along the way, you stopped needing them to. You replaced approval with self-command, noise with clarity, reaction with presence. That's Machiavelli's true formula for power. Not manipulation, but mastery. The kind that can't be faked because it's built from the inside out. From nobody to leader, not through speeches, but through silence. Not through ambition, but through control. And from this moment on, you don't just walk into rooms differently. Rooms begin to change the moment you walk.